Hi, my name is Erin Cusack, and I'm Texas Nurse Practitioners Director of Government Affairs, and we'd like to welcome everyone to our Texas Nurses Virtual Voter Information Session. We're super pleased to have the esteemed speakers on our panel that we have here today that we'll be introduced to in just a moment, as well as the presidents of both Texas Nurses Association, Tammy Eads, and the president of Texas Nurse Practitioners, Christy Blanco. There is a lot of new information and changes and a lot of misinformation out there regarding the November 3rd election, especially in the context of COVID. So we want to make sure we clarify that information and get you all of the details you need to know to make sure you're registered on time, vote on time, and to ensure that your vote counts. But first of all, let me go ahead and introduce you to our two speakers. We have Jacqueline Kalanin, who became an election judge in 1981 and Bexar County Elections Manager in 1997, where she oversaw the 2002 implementation of electronic voting throughout the county. 3 years later, she was appointed Elections Administrator. During her tenure, she has conducted over 754 elections. She holds a professional certification through Auburn University as a Certified Elections Region Administrator and has served as past president of the Texas Association of Election Administrators. She is a facilitator for Texas's Secretary of State Law Seminars, a member of the Secretary of State's Committee on Forms Review, on the Advisory Board for Writing a National Paper on Voting, member of the Pew Charitable Trust Committees on Military Voting and on election official training, and on the Americans with Disabilities National Task Force sponsored by Pew and the University of Georgia. We also have today with us Grace Shamane. She is president of the League of Women Voters of Texas. She joined the League of Women Voters in 2012 and has served on the board since 2014 and previously as advocacy chair. She specializes in the use of technology to support the League mission of empowering voters and defending democracy. Importantly to note, Grace is also a retired pediatric nurse practitioner. So we want to welcome both of our speakers today, and I will hand it over to them. We will transition later to a moderated panel with the presidents of our associations, Tammy Eads and Christy Blanco, and finally at the end we will open it up to audience Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat box and we will get to them at the end. But without further ado, I will hand it over to our speakers now. Thank you so much.
In the pandemic, we have watched our by mail applications for our seniors over 65. That number has grown. We now have 75,000 applications in-house, where in the past we've topped out at about 60,000. So we expect to see that number go up because we'll be accepting applications through the 23rd of October. And I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity so that we can speak and talk, because the nurses associations and the nurses are just, they're the frontline heroes. They absolutely have been doing just a fabulous, fabulous job. And we need to make sure that they can vote, and we need to make sure that their patients can vote. We were just talking offline on the ability that the Texas Election Code has a really wonderful procedure for if someone's in the hospital to allow them to vote. But it takes personal intervention. It takes a family member, or maybe in these harsh times, it may take an employee of the hospital that would bring the application down to us. We just are ready. We would recommend, if anybody at this point, if someone's in the hospital and they're able, have them fill out an application for a ballot by mail now. Well, and we can send it, to their home. We can send it to the hospital. We're asking people to be proactive. Let's not wait until the last minute. Let's take advantage of the opportunity for these people to vote. I just know it is so important. We can say historically, the things and the importance of the people when they just, it's critical that they will relax more. I know they stress if they can't vote when they're in the hospital. And in the past here in Bexar County, as we were talking about curbside voting, Grace, we literally have people coming up to our early voting sites to vote curbside in an ambulance. They're on their way to the hospital or they've been released from the hospital. And it is so very important to them that they literally go, wait, we have to stop. And they vote. Nothing warms your heart more than that. And that's the kind of stories that you all, the nurses, can tell us, because you're on the front line. You know where those patients' hearts are. We just get to see it a couple times a year, or maybe in these 4 years, every 4 years, because some people think the presidential election is the largest, is the biggest, is the most important. But here in the election world, some of those school district elections and the city elections have a more close tie to the voters and affects their everyday life a little bit more. But we welcome this opportunity today to be able to help answer some questions and make sure that we can help as many people as possible go through the program.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll go ahead and introduce Grace. So we have Grace Shamane. She is president of the League of Women Voters of Texas, or LWVTX. She joined the League of Women Voters in 2012 and has served on the LWVTX board since 2014 and previously as LWVTX advocacy chair. She specializes in the use of technology to support the League mission of empowering voters and defending democracy. Grace is also a retired pediatric nurse practitioner. The League of Women Voters of Texas is a nonpartisan grassroots civic organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Membership in the League is open to people 16 years of age and older of all gender identities. With 100 years of experience, the League is one of America's oldest and most trusted civic nonprofit organizations. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. What I'm going to do is, so that you don't have to look at my face the whole time, is I am going to share my screen so I could run through some slides. So here I go. I'm going to share my screen, see how that works. Hold on. Oh. Maybe I'm going to share my screen. Where did my, hold on just a minute. Aha, thank goodness. Woo, that was scary. Okay, so here I am, and let me go through, I'm going to run through these slides really quick. Oh, no. There we go. So this is Susan B. Anthony. You all know who she is. Everybody thinks women's suffrage is all about Susan B. Anthony, but that is just not so. It took many, many, many years and many, many different people in order to get the 19th Amendment passed. It's our 100th anniversary, and everybody should stand up and give a big woohoo for the 19th Amendment, because that is when women got the right to vote in our Constitution. It took many years to get this done, and I'm here to tell you it wasn't all Susan B. Anthony. I'm also here to tell you that it wasn't all people who got the right to vote when the 19th Amendment passed. Many women were still had to fight for years and years, especially Black women and people of color had to fight on until the Voting Rights Act in 1965. Let's see how I did. Yay! So this is one of the, I just wanted to show you that there's things that nurses are special at, nurses and healthcare providers. Minnie Fisher Cunningham was one of the ones that was truly influential in getting women the right to vote, and she was a pharmacist. And she worked for many years and continued working even after the 19th Amendment was passed as a League of Women Voters advocate. Let's see. Oop. But there were people all over Texas. Most of the people fighting for suffrage were people who had money or position, because everybody else was, struggling. And when you're struggling, it's hard to fight for those kind of things. But I really like this person, who is Eva Carrillo De Garcia. She's from Austin. She was with the League of Women Voters and also with LULAC, and she fought for voting rights. She was a suffragist. She also fought for better schools, better health care, voting rights, and also for youth in her community. So people are able to get things done, and she was a nurse. Another nurse who was very important in the suffrage work and did lots of good work after suffrage was passed is Helen Edmonds, and she was from Texas City. And she went and got the 19th Amendment passed, and then she became the president of the League of Women Voters of Texas, and then she went and became a representative, and she made all these changes. And think about the perspective when women got the right to vote, when nurses got the right to vote, when more people were involved in voting, things came up that were taken care of, such as mental health, child health, the working hours for women. These are all legislation that she was able to push through because she cared so much about the people of her community. She was a nurse, and you could see her there in that picture. So that's just a few little facts. Here's the election deadlines. Register to vote by October 5th. Do not put this off. Nothing should be put off. Everything should be done right now. When we say register to vote by October 5th, that also means you need to update your voter registration. If you moved, you got a new name, you need to update your registration. Early voting starts October 13th. This date for applying to vote by mail, October 23rd, if you're going to apply to vote by mail, apply now. Do not put it off till October 23rd. If you apply now, you will get your ballot at the beginning of October, and you'll have plenty of time to fill out that ballot and turn it in quickly. Everything, do it early. Election day, of course, is November the 3rd, but I want everybody to have a plan to vote, and I want them to get all their voting done as early as possible. This is the first election without straight party voting. If you've been a voter for a while, you remember going into the voting booth, and many people would click on the Democratic button or the Republican button, and that would automatically fill out the form, the ballot. Now we don't have that. It's the very first time without that. You need to bring a list of who you're going to vote for to the voting booth. You cannot open your phone in the voting booth. So it needs to be a handwritten list or a printed list or a sample ballot. I like sample ballots. I think it's a great thing to do so that you know exactly what you're doing when you show up at that voting booth. Just as a reminder, remember when you show up at the voting booth, don't wear anything political. They will make you take off your hats, turn your shirt inside out, whatever. Just go and wear plain clothes, and be sure and thank those election workers. They are not getting paid that much, and they are doing a fantastic service. Many of them are new because the people who normally work the elections were 65 and older, and they can't work the elections right now. So many of them have just been trained. They're new. Smile at them. Be nice to them. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Go in there and have a great time if you plan to vote in person. Here are some wonderful websites. We'll provide you with the slideshow afterwards in a email. Vote411.org is the League's Nonpartisan Voters Guide. It is a great resource. You should be able to find who is on your ballot, compare the candidates. You go through, read what the candidate's belief is on different issues, choose who you want to vote for, and then write it down, or at the end you could print up who the candidates of your choice. It's a fantastic tool. If you have questions about the election, sorry about my dog. If you have questions about the election, lwvtexas.org or votetexas.gov, or go to your county election website. Right now, if people don't have a computer at home or a printer at home, they could go to register2vote.org, and they will actually mail you a filled out voter registration application. It's a great resource, all stamped with the envelope ready to go. Young people love it because they don't have printers at home, and they also don't know how to use a stamp enveloper. I'm just categorizing people, but it's a great resource. What will my ballot look like? Go to your county election website. All the county election websites are required to have a sample ballot. Print up that sample ballot if you can. At least look at it, know who's on the ballot. Starts off with the president, but it goes all the way down to the school boards. Very important. Use your voter's guide at vote411.org to compare the candidates and decide who you're going to vote for. And be sure to take the list of candidates to the polls. Let's see. What can you take? Take your sample ballot, take your face mask and hand sanitizer if you're going to vote in person. Take your family, friends, take your smile, bring a thank you. Don't turn on your cell phone or bring any campaign materials. Just encouraging everybody to vote safe. This election, don't wait until election day to vote if you can help it. Try to vote early. Vote at an off time when fewer people are going to be there, because many nurses have jobs where they may be doing shift work, and so you could do voting at a time that is not as many people are at the voting booth, and that just helps everybody out. Who can vote by mail in Texas? 65 or older, sick or disabled, out of the county, or in jail. Whoops, I didn't know how I did that. So when you think about that, when you get this, just think, do I have a health problem that is impacted by COVID? And if you do have a health problem that is impacted by COVID, check the disability box. Don't write in anything because it's nobody's business but your own. If you have a health condition, you do not have to share that with anybody. And fill out that vote by mail application and vote safely in your own home so you can protect yourself and others. We have more information on that at lwvtexas.org. Yeah, that's about what I said. So one of the things I thought would be interesting for nurses is because we're caretakers and we take care of not only ourselves and our family, but also our patients. So different, maybe some of your patients has disabilities. So this just goes over some of the rights that voters with disabilities have. They do have a right to vote by mail. They also, if they show up and they want to vote at the polling place, they can ask the election official if they could move ahead in the line. Say if they have a breathing problem or they just are very weak, they can move ahead in the line if they ask the election official at the polling place. They could also curbside vote. There are special voting machines at all the voting places that they could use, and they're allowed to use an interpreter of their choice. And Jackie will tell me if I've said something wrong. Again, if you're a shift worker and you want to help out democracy right now, you may be able to contact your county election department and sign up to be an election worker. Counties across the state need more election workers because many of those 65 and over are not able to do this. Please help us out here. This is about our democracy. And then if you have a question or concern, please let me know. I'd be happy to help you. And I'm going to stop the share now. Boop. Did that work? Stop share. Boop. There I am.
Good to go.
I just threw it real fast. If you have any more questions, let me know.
Well, we have TNA president and the TNP president have some questions for our speakers, so we'll go ahead and hand it over to them at this point. Thank you, Grace and Jackie.
Yes, thank you, Grace and Jackie. Some great information and some of the things I didn't even realize or understand, but thank you for shedding the light. Grace, the first question I have is, in your experience doing voter education, outreach, and registration, what is the #1 barrier that usually prevents Texans from voting?
I think it's mostly apathy, and they don't realize how important their vote is, and how much power it gives you, and that every vote, your vote is your power. It impacts your ability to get policies that you want into place. It impacts your neighborhood, your streets, your schools, your police, and your health departments. And I think it's really important that everybody know that when you call up your elected officials and you say, I'm really sick of this and this needs to change, they are going to look and see if you voted. And if you haven't voted, they're not going to listen to you as well. So please be a voter.
Thank you.
Oh, Christy, I think you're currently muted.
That's like the, I don't know, the line of 2020, right? I think you're muted. Sorry about that. So I know Jacqueline had mentioned that, nurses are doing great as far as voting, but I'd like to know, do nurses tend to have a higher voter registration and voting numbers compared to other professions and jobs? And if so, why do you think this is so? And this could be for Grace or Jacqueline. Mm-hmm.
That's a great question, Christy. And while we don't track those numbers by profession, we do know just anecdotally that our election officials are obviously aware of when they see the healthcare professionals coming in. And especially at this time, we were able to, I hate to use the word practice run, but we ran the July 14th election here in Texas, the primary runoff, during the highest spikes in the COVID that we were going through. And so we reached out, and we were just so, I can't tell you how proud we were of our election officials that stepped up. They handled it. We gave them all the protective measures that we possibly could. And, obviously much of it we learned from our health professionals. All of our officials had on their gloves and their face masks and their shields and their hand sanitizer. And when I say anecdotally, they ended up having conversations with our healthcare workers who came in and were commiserating, if that's the correct word, on getting used to all of the PPE that we've now learned that anachronism. And the respect that was shown to the healthcare workers by the other voters that were there. You all need to be commended. And this is one time I wish we could capture that goodwill that occurs in the voting site when everyone at this point sees the heroes that are coming out, whether it's the police or the firemen. But right now, the health professionals are at the head of that line, and all of them should be commended.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That was great. Jacqueline, this question is also for you. We had a first look at our voter turnout in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic during the May runoff. How was voter turnout in Texas statewide compared to prior years? And what does this tell us about the November election?
Again, Tammy, that's a great question. We were, to put it mildly, we were blown out of the water by the turnout. When we normally have a runoff election, and Grace can tell you this also, that they're very, very poorly attended. We'll get a 2%, and the highest had been a 5% turnout in the entire last decade. Well, this one hit. And again, I had said before, the highest numbers of the COVID, it was off the charts. And we hit double digits. We had a 10% turnout. We smiled, and again, amongst ourselves and amongst the other elections administrators, we were telling ourselves that maybe, just maybe, the voters were looking for a reason to leave their homes and do that outing. But they came. We were able to assure the voters through a lot of media that they would be safe. We had lessons learned, because again, we provided contact-free voting for the voters themselves. We had protected the election officials, as I said, but we also provided PPE for the voters coming in. And as I'm sure all of your nurses can attest to, sometimes it doesn't quite go the way you want it to go. We started out with giving the voters, as they stepped in, hand sanitizers, and then we gave them gloves, or we gave them their choice of a pencil so that they could use the eraser as a stylus. So we would meet them at the door, greet them at the door, keep social distancing, which everyone did, which was just, I can't tell you how great that made everybody feel. But in Texas, you have to have voter ID, so you need that photo. Well, what we found out was, oh, we gave the voters gloves when they came in. And then as they stepped to the qualifying table, the election officials said, "May I see your ID?" And it was a little bit hard to get those licenses out of those wallets with the gloves on. So we had to just sort of, massage that process just a little. But the voters came out and they were pleasantly surprised. I still joke that when we outfitted everyone for July, I've been in the election world for quite a while, but never had I thought that part of our election equipment would be all the PPE. And we actually, here in Bexar County, we bought trash cans for all of those sites, because we knew that with those gloves and those pencils, we wanted to be good stewards of the facilities that we were in. And so, I mean, we went to that length, and we heard nothing but good things. Now, having said that, I'm going to go one step further. Well, the governor has given us additional days, and he gave us additional days in July, which helped tremendously. His directives did not go far enough, in our humble opinion, because we are not requiring face masks or face shields or temperature checks for the voters. We are not allowed to do that. And that caused some stress in some of the poll sites when the voters came in without face masks. And what we've recommended again is that they take one of the voting units and separate it from the group, so that if that person has come in, because we obviously cannot reject them, all voters are coming in. But just like the nurses are doing, I mean, you're wearing those masks all the time. And we want to stress that. So if you all have any way, or whoever you talk to, it's a sign of respect. It's obviously right now needed for health concerns, but we're sort of coming at it from the other angle of respect the election officials. You heard Grace say thank them. Respect the other voters, respect the process. And we're asking that everyone wear that face mask.
Jacqueline, excellent points. Thank you. Thank you. Grace, I have a question for you. You went over some great resources where voters can find out where candidates stand on different issues. What are other ways voters can learn about candidates, especially local and state officials?
Well, many times, so since I'm speaking to nurses, many times there's different nurses unions or nurses associations that actually have ask candidates questions like our voter's guide, but they're looking for different things, or they rate how they voted on different healthcare issues. And so that's what I would do, is I would go to some of those perhaps nurse unions, or even the Texas Medical Association, or some of those, and just see how they are doing with the different healthcare issues that are important to you. Is it, whether it be Medicaid or CHIP, or something to do with your profession. I think it's really important. You could also go to the candidate sites and review what they say, but sometimes the candidate sites are a little iffy, because they just always say that perfect little thing on the candidate sites, and it doesn't really give you the information you need. So you could see if it's on vote411.org, the League's Guide. You could also go to Ballotopedia or something like that. And that it's almost got too much information for me, but if you really want to research it, oftentimes Ballotopedia works. It's mostly for larger cities and metropolitan areas, less for the rural areas. So that's what I would say.
Is there any place specific that somebody can go to for healthcare resources? I know you mentioned Medicare and Medicaid, but is there any site that somebody could go to specifically only for healthcare issues?
I don't know about that. I would probably try out like the Pediatric Association, the Medical Association. You guys are the Texas Nurses Association. Sometimes those organizations will often have something that sort of doesn't rate them or tell you who to vote for, but more like gives you, how did they vote on these particular bills? And to me, that is what's really telling. It's not what they say, oh, I love children. Everybody loves children. Of course we all love children. Of course we want everybody to be healthy. That would be fantastic. So let's see if they're an incumbent, how they did in the past on these specific bills. And if they're new, hopefully you could go to a candidate forum, go to a voter's guide, go to a union place and look and see what they said when they're answered specifically. Do you believe in Medicare for all? Do you believe in covering pre-existing conditions? Whatever's important to you is what you can ask them directly.
Thank you, Grace, for that knowledge. Jackie, this question is for you. There are a number of things that election officials are doing to make voting as safe as possible this November. In your experience as the election administrator, what is the safest thing that voters can do to protect themselves, other voters, and of course our poll workers?
Wow, what a great question. And I think I have to hearken back to, please, the number one point we need is just bring your respect. Please bring your respect. Take care of yourself. Again, as I said a minute ago, with lessons learned, as the voter comes in, we're working strenuously to protect them with the hand sanitizers, with the gloves, the entire way through the process. We're blessed that we have electronic voting, and we have a paper trail now. We've just switched systems in the last year. We have vote centers in Bexar County now, which has become quite popular in the state of Texas, which means that any voter can vote at any poll site at any time. They don't have to go back to their home precinct. And again, we want them to come with their hand sanitizers if they have their personal hand sanitizers. Please put the masks on. We will have masks available, but again, we cannot require that. We just ask that, and I mean, Grace did such a great job to come prepared to the election site. Do your homework. Look for that sample ballot. I'm sorry to say right now, the sample ballots are not out. Politics is an amazing animal, as we all know. And just late Tuesday, the state Supreme Court said we all had our ballots ready. We had our sample ballots ready. We have to mail the military ballots out tomorrow by a federal deadline. We were all set to go. And at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the state Supreme Court said, oh, wait, you need to put these 3 people back on the ballot. So everything sort of went up in smoke because these were statewide candidates. So everybody scrambles to do these ballots. And again, at this point, we're pushing to get those military ballots out. So the sample ballots will be coming, slowly, but they will be there. And we want them to be prepared. Texas, a couple of years ago, made a recommendation and then which they then turned into statute that said that we are required to post on our website, every county of the 254 in Texas, the person's individual sample ballot. For instance, here in Bexar County, our sample ballot right now is 2 huge pages because the governor in May postponed the May elections and moved them to November. So when you have counties our size, we have 26 other individual political subdivisions sharing this ballot. So we want voters to go and look and get their individual sample ballots. So we have websites where they go and they put in their birth date and then they put in their house number. That's all the information we need, and it will come up and it will tell them where their nearest poll site is. Here's your individual sample ballot so that you can draw it down, and as, excuse me, as Grace said, print it out if you have that ability. Please print it out. If you can't print it out and it's on your phone, when you get to the poll site, the election officials will hand you a sample ballot and you can go step out of the 100 feet, mark that sample ballot yourself so that when you get to that booth, you're eligible right away to just go through, use your pre-marked ballot and go through there. This time we need to bring to the attention, we have a list of write-in candidates when we have these general elections. And I think we have 9 different presidential candidates and vice presidential candidates as a write-in. We have write-ins for the US Senate. So those will all be in the booth. But homework, 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 preparation, 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 both ready to vote and to keep yourself safe and to respect everyone in the process, please.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That was really good advice. So Grace, you had mentioned kind of a little bit the dates for voting by mail. What advice would you give to everybody here to make sure their application and ballot get in with plenty of time to spare? And when is it too late? When do you feel it might be too late?
Well, if you've already applied to vote by mail, and I personally, I don't know what Jacqueline's going to say, but I would contact your county election office to make sure you're really on the vote by mail list, because you want to make sure you're on it right now so that you get your ballot as soon as possible. When you get your ballot, most ballots, if you're on that list well in advance, you'll get that ballot mailed to you 30 days in advance. So you get that ballot, you compare the candidates, you choose who you're going to vote for, you fill out the ballot. And if you're going to use the mail and turn it in by mail, turn it in as quickly as possible. Don't wait until the last minute, because it will, if you drop it in the mail through the United States Postal Service, they're saying it may take a little bit longer. So you want to give it plenty of time. So if you get that ballot 30 days beforehand, you fill out the ballot with who you want to vote for, and then turn it in as quickly as you can. If you're using the United States Postal Service, you can also use FedEx or UPS if you wanted to. You can also drop your ballot directly off to the elected, the early voting clerks in your county. Different counties are going to have different places where that is. So please go to your county website and find out where they want you to drop off that ballot. If you do personally drop off that ballot, then you will have to has to be the voter. That voter has to have an ID. You have to drop it off at an official county election office where the early voting clerk has set up that system, right? So it has to be the voter with your ID, with the ballot to turn in, okay? You can also, if you decide to, you just like, I want to vote in person. So you take your ballot that hasn't been filled out and you take it to the polling site and you turn it in. You say, I don't want to vote by mail. You turn in your ballot and then you just vote like you would normally if you're voting in person. Does that make sense? So there's filling it out and mailing it in as early as you can. Don't forget to sign the outside of the ballot. There is sending it in through the United States Postal Service or through UPS or FedEx. There is turning it in person with your ID at your county early voting clerk office, like your county election official office. They'll tell you where it is on the website. Or you could decide you want to vote in person. You take that ballot, you turn it in, and you vote in person. Voila, your vote will be counted. If you turn in your ballot, if your ballot arrives at your county election office later than election day, it's just hard. If it's postmarked, it can arrive by 5 o'clock the day after, but otherwise it's just not going to be counted. So it needs to arrive to your county election office by election day. So please, please, please do everything as early as possible. Jackie, did I get everything right?
You did a great job. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And
Thanks,
Jackie, that brings up a good point. So we're going to see a larger number of mail-in votes this election. How prepared are we for that to come in?
Yes, we've scaled up. I think a lot of the offices have. I mean, we've brought in more equipment and more people, and I mean, we're ordering ballot stock and envelopes, and it's quite a job. But we feel that we're in great shape. I mean, at our largest historical election, we had 60,000 people apply for a mail ballot. But in that election, it was also a 2-page ballot. So we know that, yes, we may be stressed and yes, we may be tired, but we know we have the capability of printing out over 120,000 ballots. We do our own printing in-house here. So it's just a matter of hours in the day. But we're starting, as I said, today, everybody's sort of scurrying because we want to work on those military ballots and put them in the mail tomorrow, and then send out our email ballots on Saturday. So somebody's pushed the go button, and we're ready.
Good. Sounds like a big job ahead of you. The next question I have is for you, Jackie, also. A voter is eligible to vote by mail based on disability if they have a sickness or physical condition that prevents the voter from appearing in person without personal assistance or the likelihood of injuring the voter's health. While lack of immunity to the new coronavirus alone doesn't qualify a voter for a mail-in ballot based on disability, would they be eligible if they were at a high-risk medical category, such as a pregnant woman or an immunocompromised person?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we are not an investigative body. When you apply for a mail ballot, it's just a matter of checking the box that says disability. If you have, I mean, and they give an official list, but it is in my opinion, it's nowhere near complete because, you know, other people and we're learning, and, you know, we're talking to the best of the best right now with the nurses, and, you know, you can't say that you can only do this because these are what we've put on the list. So it's up to the person. If their own sense of this is going to, you know, endanger me, I do have some underlying risk factors, then absolutely check that disability box, because no one's going to call you on the phone and ask you.
Mhm. Great. Grace, I have a question. We'd really love for you to repeat this just one more last time for our attendees today. Can you go over the big deadlines for the November 3rd election again? I mean, specifically maybe the voter registration, early voting, and how can voters look themselves up to confirm they're registered and find their polling place?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen so we could look at it at the same time, if I could do it. Let's see. Boop. Yay! See if I could go backwards now. Nope, maybe not. Okay, let's get back to this one because this has got everything on it. Boop. Okay, so votetexas.gov is a great spot where you could go. It is run by the Texas Secretary of State, who is our chief election official here. And you could look up whether you're registered to vote. If you move within your county, you could also update your voter registration there. If you change your name but are still within the same county, you could update your voter registration there. If you moved out of the county or you're new to Texas, then you will need to fill out and physically sign the voter registration form. You could also go to your county election website. I don't know what there's 254 counties. Each one has different talents and abilities. So go to your county election website, see what they have available for you that explains the voter registration process. They do have contact information. You could always call your county voter registrar and see if you're on the voter registration list. Very important to do it now. Of course, you could go to our website. We explain things pretty carefully. I'm a nurse. I try to explain things in as simple language as possible. And if you get concerned as we get closer to the election, you could call Texas Election Protection or Texas Voter Protection. Let me go back to this dates. The last day to register to vote is October the 5th. Do not wait. Do not wait. Do it right now. And if you have friends, relatives, young friends, don't just think about yourself. Think about this is your community. Make sure your community is registered to vote, especially now when it's so difficult to get that to happen. We want to encourage new and young people to vote in every election. In-person voting, you can apply to vote by mail up to October 23rd. Yet election day is November the 3rd. It's a little tight. So try, if you're going to vote by mail, if that's what your plan is, then go ahead and apply now and get that off to your county people in plenty of time so that they could get the ballot back to you and then you could get the ballot back to them. In-person voting starts October 13th. Very exciting. And you can vote in person all the way until October 30th. So if it's Halloween, you cannot vote on Halloween, but you can vote the day before. Or if you're one of those people who just can't stand it, you want to vote on election day because you like standing in lines, wait until November the 3rd. It is a fun day. It is exciting, and it is kind of like camaraderie and democracy. So you can, if you wanted to, wait until November the 3rd. Go to your county election website to find your polling place. Go to vote411.org to compare candidates, but make a plan to vote right now. How are you going to vote? It's too important. And then don't just think about yourself. Think about all the people you know to help them make their plan to vote too. And I'm going to stop sharing. Boop.
Wonderful. And I think that brings us to the end of our moderated questions. And we have a few questions coming in from the audience today that I would love to touch on. We received a couple in particular on voter guides or guidance that Texas Nurses Association or Texas Nurse Practitioners provides, since those are issues our attendees care about. So I can address this question to Tammy and Christy. What is available in the way of those sorts of resources? or do they exist, or do you have guidance for?
We do on for Texas Nursing Association. If you'll go to our website, and I believe our CEO Cindy is on the call also, and she can share some in the chat box information on that. But if you go, and I believe also to Christy, to your website, the TNP website. So
yeah.
And
Yes.
we have available as well. We don't have a scorecard on all of the legislators and their positions specifically on NP issues. However, we have a candidate questionnaire that outlines all of the 4 or 5 things that we care about and that Texas legislators actually have the power to affect change over. And so we are happy to give you that candidate questionnaire, because sometimes the most effective thing you can do is schedule a meeting or meet one-on-one with the candidate and just go through it either verbally or send it to their campaign and see what they come back with. We've had success, especially when individual voters reach out and try to connect with their candidates that way. So if that's something you're interested in, contact TNP and we'd be happy to provide that questionnaire for candidates. Okay, so we have another question. Some counties in Texas have voting centers where even on voting day, voters can go to the center regardless of the voting precinct in their county. Have these been successful? Many in my county are opposed because they feel this may advantage one party over another. So is that something that we're going to have in the November election, and is it successful overall?
So I would just say that many counties have gone to this, and other states have used this, and it has not shown to be something that is valuable for one party or another. That is not. It is just valuable for voters, so that the voters can go, so they know where their voting place is, and that they could go to any place that's convenient to them. Wouldn't you agree, Jackie?
Absolutely, Grace. We started our models of vote centers here in Bexar County last November. And when we rolled out the first one, and then we did our, as they say, the data diving after it was over, 40% of the voters voted in precincts that were not their own. They were nowhere near where the sites were. So that tells us immediately that it is a service and that people are looking, they're looking for convenience. Again, that was pre-COVID. And so we just sort of couldn't figure out why one person would vote at a site, 30 miles from where they were registered to vote. And then we stopped and we thought, well, we think what happened in a lot of instances is like the teachers of this that were in the buildings that were poll sites now had the opportunity to just step up right there and vote. So it's really well accepted. And I agree with Grace, it does not favor one over the other. Because, again, we have, and there are pockets in every community that you can say, okay, that precinct's going to vote Democratic and that one's going to vote mainly Republican. And you can see that. But once we did it for the primary and the primary runoff, it held true that the voters are accepting it. It's what they've wanted, and it's the way to go.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm getting some information from TNA's CEO, Cindy Zolnierek, and there are local government affairs reps that can provide information on candidates, and there is a government affairs person at TNP. So we'll provide who you should reach out to and contact, as well as the candidate questionnaire, because we've gotten several questions specifically on how to find candidates' positions on nursing issues. Someone had another question about what are the regulations in place about harassment or accosting of voters outside of polling places. Grace or Jacqueline?
Well, there's a 100-foot rule for if people have campaign information or talking about, promoting a certain candidate, then there's the 100-foot rule, right, Jackie?
Yes, ma'am.
And inside that 100 feet, then no, you may not wear campaign materials. You may not have campaign signs. You may take the voter's guide in because it's nonpartisan, but you can't but you can't politic inside that area, which is fantastic. So even your mask that you wear, make sure that it does not have something on there that would be considered political. And be nice. Just be nice. It's okay. Smile, be nice. This is our democracy we're talking about. It's not a football game.
That's exactly right. Or, the campaign workers have grown over the years. Some of them have gotten very, very overzealous over the years. They're pushing for that last minute vote. So when the voters pull up in their cars, there tends to be a lot of shouting going on, because if they're not right next to them, they go ahead and reach out to them. But we just, as I said, as they're getting more creative, a lot of the campaigns will have these new canopy tents that are set up, and they'll be there with their chairs, and they're going to be there all day long, which is it becomes it's become such an issue. And I don't want to go down the negative way, but here in San Antonio, in Bexar County, the city of San Antonio has had to come up with a campaign or a sign ordinance area. So each of their facilities actually fences off a section where the campaign can put their signs, where the campaign workers can stay, so that they're not impeding traffic with the facility that still is open for business. And so you'll see a lot of yellow caution tape, and it's now the campaign area. And many of the cities and the school districts have put out sign ordinances where they limit the campaign to 3 signs, and they actually tell them the size of the signs. And it has become quite the interest group. And it's pretty amazing to watch. And when you comment, and Grace, about the mask, when we had the primary runoff for the first time, these candidates are getting so very creative. For the first time, their campaign literature was a mask that said, then they mailed them to people and said, here's your mask, and be protected, but please go vote for, and then it had the candidate's name right here. And it was like, oh, so we're waiting to see what we're going to see in November. If that may have just been the tip of the iceberg for us. So we're anxious to see where that goes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to all of our panelists and speakers. And I want to hand it over to Tammy and Christy to just give closing remarks.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Jackie, for such wonderful wealth of knowledge for all of us. And I think the key point that I can't stress enough to the audience is become a voter, become a voice, and that's how you become a voice is you register to vote, get out and vote early. If you're going to mail it in early. I know I'm going just as soon as October 13th comes, we're going to vote early. So again, thank you so much, and vote.
We have over 1 million registered voters. We are the front line. Over 330,000 nurses in this state, and over 27,000 nurse practitioners. Everybody go to votetexas.gov, double check to see, make sure you're registered to vote. October the 5th is the last day to register to vote. October the 5th is the last day to register to vote. If you're going to do it by mail, do it now. Early voting, October 13th to October 30th. Do your homework, bring respect to your polling places. Don't forget to thank your election workers, and remember, your vote is your power. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I, again, thank you to all of our speakers and to the presidents for being a part of this, TNA, League of Women Voters Texas. It's been a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Let's go out and vote nurses.